Nobody cares what you think. I had this epiphany one day when I was at a Super Bowl party. Truth be told, I just went to be social. I know absolutely nothing about sports. So here I was in a group of 20 guys I barely knew, all sharing their thoughts and opinions on the teams and the players. It became readily evident to me that this group was very well versed on the subject of football and probably knew more about the players than they knew about their wives. Instantly, I got a bit insecure, thinking, what if they discover my football ignorance? Would I be outed from the group? Would I be seen as odd? Would I become a social leper? So I took a course of action that I felt would best cloak my lack of knowledge. I nodded in agreement, and when I was asked a question, I would appear to thoughtfully ponder the inquiry for a moment, and then simply turn the question back on them by saying, well, what do you think? As if I was appealing to their obvious expertise in the matter. Needless to say, it worked like a charm, and these guys were more than happy to drone on about the team and the players, and they had no idea that I knew nothing about the sport. They just wanted to show everyone at the party how knowledgeable they were and connect with other men over a common interest. I find that most interactions follow this same pattern. My father, who could work a room like a politician, used to always say that in general, people prefer to talk about themselves and things that interest them. He used to always tell me to ask open-ended questions and let the other person do 80% of the talking. There was a study I read where it turns out that people more favorably rated interactions when they got to do most of the talking. They actually liked people better who allowed them to talk the majority of the time. People like people who allow them to talk about themselves. As a sidebar, you cannot get yourself in trouble when the other person is doing most of the talking. You can't talk yourself in a corner. You can't be exposed as ignorant. You can't offend anyone. For many reasons, it's often the safest course of action for most social situations, especially when you don't know the other person well and you're both feeling each other out for compatibility. Let me just state for the record, there are some people who sincerely do care what we think, but that's reserved for a select few. Perhaps a close friend, family members, a spouse. Know your audience before you speak. Some will welcome an honest dialogue and others will recoil from it. Know the difference and act accordingly. In general, I found that most people just want your agreement and validation. They don't want your actual opinions. Social media and tech companies have figured this out long ago. Their research found that people will tune out from their platform if they're exposed to too many things that are irrelevant to their life or content that goes against their views. These companies spend billions a year to create AI systems that tailor information, news, and media to the user. What this actually does is foster an echo chamber of agreement, and it creates a false sense of reality. To the user, it appears that everyone agrees with their belief system. And this is partly why today we see people react so strongly to opinions that fall outside of their contrived worldview. It took me 40 years to figure this out. I used to offer my opinions on everything under the sun, whether or not people actually asked for it. People would come to me and ask for my opinion and advice. I felt a great sense of pride incorrectly thinking that this person must really value my insight, when in truth, they just wanted me to make them feel good by fluffing their ego. Speaking candidly can create a lot of problems if it's done in the wrong environment or with the wrong audience. You may be cast as a dissident, your words may be construed as offensive, and people in general will dislike you for it. Very few people want to hear your genuine thoughts, even if they ask for it. Most people can't handle the truth, or more correctly, what you consider to be the truth, especially if it violates their belief system. This is why when people get together in a social setting, they tend to stick to safe topics like sports, local news, entertainment, weather, etc. People are happy to listen to the observations and topics that are relevant to them. If you meet a fisherman, it's probably best to talk about fishing. If you see a foodie, it's likely safe to talk about local restaurants or a meal that you just prepared. Even so, it's still wise to keep your opinions to yourself. Keep things light and lofty, as my sister always says. In general, the only people who want to hear your unvarnished thoughts and opinions are those who are already in agreement with you. It makes people anxious when there's disagreement. It can cause them to think, are we on the same page? Can I even relate to this person? What else don't we agree on? Are we even compatible? Sometimes something just has to be said. You just can't go with the flow. The BS is piled up too high. Your personal line in the sand has been crossed. You just can't bite your tongue any longer, and you're compelled to speak up. Just be aware of the potential consequences for speaking your mind, and be willing to accept the outcomes of doing so. And always make sure the need to speak up outweighs the potential repercussions you may be facing. My advice, in general, keep your opinions to yourself. And as the old saying goes, always think before you speak.